Hey, what's going on? I'm Jason Rockman, and welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to interesting people about all kinds of interesting things. And this week's episode is no exception. Personally, for myself, this is probably one of the most important episodes that we've done. I love Faith No More, one of my favorite bands in the entire world. And today on the Rockman Power Hour, we have founding member Billy Gould from the band and Matt Wallace, their longtime producer, together. This is a very, very cool chat. We got to talk at length about many of their releases, such as The Real Thing, such as Angel Dust. So if you're a Faith No More fan, you're in for a treat today. This is an absolutely incredible conversation that I just feel privileged to have actually been a part of. And this one means a lot to me. But before I get too far, let me bring in my co-host and the man who helps make everything look and sound great, Ryan Stick. What's going on, Ryan?
How's it going, dude?
I'm good, man. You're looking mellow.
Your joy from this interview is kind of contagious. So I've been smiling all day. So I was putting it together, and I was just like, as much as I was watching them, I was watching your reaction to what they were saying. Because all your questions, you must have been wanting to know this stuff for like decades.
Dude, it's kind of like what you do with you, me, and YTV. You get a chance to talk to all these people that you absolutely love, and you get to ask them things that you've always wanted to know. And this conversation was exactly one of those. Both are so generous with their time. Both are so generous with their answers. And you could just see the genuine friendship between Billy and Matt. It was infectious. And just to be a fly on the wall, let alone be a part of the conversation, was a privilege. And I would also like to thank the people that keep the lights on at the Rockman Power. And that, of course, is Heartbeat Hot Sauce. It's been a trend now that I bring in a bottle of Heartbeat right from my fridge. I don't like to bring the shiny full ones because it's not realistic. This is what goes on with Heartbeat Hot Sauce. It's this gorgeous.
This is where I keep my Heartbeat Hot Sauce.
Heartbeat Hot Sauce, great hot sauce company out of Thunder Bay, Ontario. Check them out. And if you order right now and you use my code ROCKMAN20, which I will put right there for you, that'll get you 20% off your entire order. So check them out, heartbeathotsauce.com. Great partners here at the Rockman Power Hour. And of course, we'd like to thank the great Studio House Designs. We are rocking Studio House right now. You're wearing a very, very cool green room shirt, which is awesome. And looks good. You look good, man. You look buff in that shirt. And I'm wearing a thing.
But thank you.
And I'm wearing the thing, which just celebrated its 40th anniversary. So check them out. StudioHouseDesigns.com. Great company out of Philadelphia that I think you should rock. Good stuff. All right, Ryan. This is cool. I don't want to take any more time because I really, really want to get right into this. This is a nice long conversation with two legends. Faith No More changed the face of music. Influenced so many bands, and this was beyond a pleasure to be a part of. So check it out, our conversation with Billy Gould and Matt Wallace.
How's good, Jason?
I'm good, Matt. Do you remember us meeting?
Tell me when and where. Was it a dark alley?
No, it wasn't a dark alley. I used to sing. I kind of still do, but I don't do it much. I used to sing in Slaves on Dope. So we sat down and talked to you about doing a record once.
Fuck.
Long
Dude, that would have been
ago.
great. We should have done it.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been cool, but I remember this was a long, long time ago. I think it was probably 20-something years ago, and we were at an IHOP. Or no, we were I think we're at Mel's Diner in like the Valley or somewhere.
Oh, wow. Jeez, you got a good memory. Yeah. Dude, yeah, we should have done it, man.
Well, you know.
I don't know. If you would have done it, guys might not want to talk to each other right now.
So here we go. What a great way to start this off. You guys have been friends for a long time.
Oh, Bill and I? Fuck.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So like you guys have been friends since you were teens.
I've been friends with Matt since before he even swore.
And before I swore too. Yeah, Bill and I met. I think Bill was like 19 and I was
18.
18,
I was
yeah.
18. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was 20 or 21. So yeah, a long time ago.
So at this point, I mean, obviously I want to talk a lot about a lot of things with you guys, but are you guys at a point? Because I know a lot of people, like I'm 51, and I know there's people I've been friends with for a long time, especially people you work with professionally. You'll go through like highs, you might go through a low, and then when you have distance from things, there's an appreciation that you get, and you're just like, I'm just glad we've hung in together this long. Have you guys gone through all those kind of things, or have you just always been consistently on pretty good?
I don't know, man. For me, I feel like I'm more in touch with Bill and Borden now than I ever have been. I think for whatever reason, we're just kind of more friends again, because there was while we worked together, we were friends, and everyone kind of drifts their own places. And then I think all of a sudden I end up, writing and saying hi to these guys just for the hell of it.
Starting really kind of actually in the 80s, for about 20 years. I mean, we were on the road a lot too. I lost touch with a lot of people. I mean, I stayed in touch with them, like checking in with them once or twice a year or something. I'd say Matt, we probably talked once a year or something very, cursorily. But yeah, there wasn't, that's a kind of weird thing about being a touring musician too. You kind of like, now that I'm not a touring musician, me and Matt talk all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, I actually ended up going on tour with the band. I actually toured with Bill and the guys to Chile, and then we also went to New Zealand.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Was this Sol Invictus like after, like on the?
No.
Oh no! This is Introduce Yourself, or it was.
No, I think it was the real thing for New Zealand.
Yeah.
I remember that we hadn't been that part of the world before. That was our first time. And Matt, I think we were at the airport, and then Matt's like, "Hey guys," we're like, "What are you doing here?" So I'm coming on the plane with you guys.
Now I know Matt can pull his weight in the studio, but when he was on the road, was he pulling his weight? Like, was he humping gear, or was he
fucking sissy?
No.
They're the road dogs. I was just like, I have to brush my teeth, and I need to have my clothes pressed, and I need to eat the special cereal, that kind of crap,
It's the last couple weeks have been significant anniversaries and very important records, obviously to you guys and to Faith No More fans. And, that is, of course, the real thing on the 20th, 33 years. And everyone was talking about Angel Dust. And I think it's sometimes when it's in those increments of 10, when you get to the 30, it's a big deal. The 20th.
Yeah.
So is it, and I know a lot of people have been asking you guys questions, and you've been talking a bit about the process back then. Is it satisfying to look back and see that those records that you guys did when you were kids, still having this lasting effect on people?
Yeah, for me, absolutely. Bill may not remember this, but when we were making the real thing, I remember Borden and maybe Bill were just saying they thought they were making a pop record. And I was like, this is not a pop record, you guys. I don't know what the fuck you're smoking, but this is not a pop record. And they really, really believed that it was a pop record. And sure enough, they were right.
In context, to what we did later, for sure. Yeah.
When you listen to the real thing, it's so poppy, it's so catchy. Patton's hooks are just like they're hooks, they're pop hooks. And it's funny because I recently said this to a few people, and I talked about it on my radio show how when I first got Angel Dust, I remember exactly where I was. I was dating a girl in Boston. I went to go see her, and there was a new Faith No More record out. So I went to Newbury Comics and I picked up a copy and I put it in my Discman. And I remember I first heard it, and right away I was like, I don't know if I like this, which is crazy now because it's one of my Desert Island discs. But when I first heard it, I was like, this is so fucking different. And the vocals they weren't up front like the real thing. They were kind of buried, and everything and there was a lot going on. It was just textured, and I guess it was all the tracks too. And it was a lot to handle. But now, being more of a seasoned music listener, I realize that if I don't like an album at the beginning, sometimes that means if I tough it out, it's going to be the best reward. And that's what happened with
that. Can be true.
Yeah. I think you're right.
We had a lot. I mean, I personally had a lot of experiences of playing it for people, being excited about it, and having them kind of like wondering, like, what is this? And seeing the look on their face was always really discouraging. But yeah, I mean, it is amazing 30 years later. I mean, really, when you make something like this, and you're we just kind of gamble, the best possible scenario is that in 30 years from now, will anybody care about this? Like, and if they did, like, that is the ultimate goal, So in that sense, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, because you guys could have made The Real Thing Part 2 and done really, really well, obviously, but you weren't going to repeat yourselves. It's interesting when Kerrang, this is like 15 years ago, came out with the most influential records of all time. I remember I started in the 50s going, maybe I've got a record in the 50s. And like, no, nothing in the 40s. No. Once I get to the 30s and 20s, it's all these other bands. I go, well, none of my records made it, whatever. Number one, Angel Dust. Like, oh my God, I almost like pooped my pants.
Yeah. I mean, and it really did influence a lot of people and continues to. And it's fun to find new generations. I went on YouTube and I found there's this girl that listens to albums for the first time. that she's never heard.
Oh yeah.
And
Cool.
there's this, and a reaction of her listening to this, and she's like, and it's just great to hear someone with completely fresh ears that isn't influenced by anything before or after hear this for the first time. It's
interesting. Once that record came out, people like bands found my home number, like System of a Down and Korn. Like people were calling it my home. They want to be a record. I'm like, what? You know, what the hell? It's crazy.
That's fucking nuts. Like Serge is outside your window. It's like, wake up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Somebody obviously was spreading your number around.
So yeah, probably you, Bill. But yeah, it was a really influential record. And it's one of those records that at first listen, it might take a lot to kind of get into it. And but then after a while, I had that same thing with this band Talk Talk. They had an album called Laughing Stock.
Oh wow!
And like I love how he just rolls off. This band Talk Talk, like fucking Talk Talk.
Okay.
Fucking
but
love Talk Talk.
I remember I viscerally hated that record for the first 3 listens. I hated it. I thought it was the most piece of crap ever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I really like this. It was really good.
Oh, Talk Talk are just I love Talk Talk.
Yeah, because the song starts with a guy strums a guitar chord, and it's like you look at your watch, like 25 seconds later, they strum another chord. You're like, come on, man, let's get going with this thing. It's just so like lethargic and just Anyway, it took a while.
Do you know there's a book about making a couple of their albums, right?
Oh, really?
Their engineer wrote, and it's fabulous. It's fascinating. Like they didn't make records easy at all. They did everything the hard way, Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. That sounds good.
When you think of the obviously the ups and downs through the process of Angel Dust, I mean, it was documented. I know there's that documentary that's kind of made its way onto YouTube that really you guys had cameras in there the whole time. I think it added probably to the outcome. I mean, the tension, whatever was going on in the room, the frustration, I'm sure it added to the outcome of what we hear.
I mean, you know what, you can't, from the final product, there's a lot of things that contributed to it. You can't say what thing made it what it was.
Yeah.
But that was the environment. And so that was part of what the record is, for sure. We were there for 2.5 months, Matt, would you say?
Yeah.
Pretty much every day.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That experience had a lot to do with just how it came out.
It was really fascinating for me because I didn't know at the time that the band wanted to do a very different record from the real thing.
Right.
But me as their friend, producer, cheerleader, all that stuff, I wanted to make a very different sonic sounding record. So it was really interesting. We both came into it like, we're not doing the real thing part 2.
Sure.
And on our own, we decided we weren't going to do that, which was really fascinating. I've never had that opportunity or situation with another band where we both decided to go in a very different direction. So it was really
interesting with Matt didn't really tell us where he was going with it so much. So I remember like the rooms we were in before had these big drum rooms that were very live. And we got into the studio. It was probably a 1940s, probably recording studio. It had this radio sound of the 50s and 40s, very dead and tight. And the drums are really punchy in there. And I was like, this is really, I mean, same instruments we had basically from the record before, but they just sounded really different in that room. And then Matt was really anti-compression at the time, which I didn't really know how compression worked then. So all I knew was like, how come it sounds different? You know? We're gonna make a record without compression.
I really pushed that hard because I felt the whole thing was over compressed, too much high end, and so I really eschewed that approach. I wanted to do something very different, just like you guys as a band. I didn't want to repeat that, and I wanted to find like different avenues. And that was really interesting because if you remember, Bill, we actually went to Brilliant Studios first, and we did a bunch of we did some demos. Then we went back to that. We actually reamped the drums through that studio and recorded them.
That's
and then Bill and
Brilliant was a big live room.
Okay.
Yeah. So we reamped the drums in that room, but they weren't played in that room. And then Bill and I spent a lot of time. He had that place in like the Sunset area, and we actually spent a lot of time with his 8-track, like working on guitar parts and working on arrangements. We did a lot of work on that record. A lot of work.
We did. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's. Yeah, with the front end of it was just with the pre-production, and then you and I working on guitar stuff. Making that record was really, really rugged. It was really rugged.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we had any days off, right? I mean, I think everybody was getting really tired and pissed off, and like we were working hard.
The worst thing was that the people who ran Toast at the time were not well versed at how to support a band. I remember I had to send some like FedExes, and I'm like, hey, can you guys send this FedEx? Like, oh, do you have an account or can you pay for it? I'm like, I'm working, and then our assistant Gibbs stopped showing up in the room. So I'm in the room doing the engineering, producing, assisting, and they stopped answering the phone for us. We had our own phone line. So I'd be in the middle of a take, like ring, ring. No, Patton's not here. Hey, okay, bye. You know, like ring. The pressure on that record was really, really substantial.
Yeah.
And you know, you're coming off the, you know, and of course, you know, when you go back to the real thing had been out for a while. You know, everyone thinks, oh yeah, you put the real thing out and then Epic just hit. You guys had been working that record live for fucking what, 18 months?
That record failed. 18 months we were on tour.
Right. Until
supporting it. And it kind of, and like, yeah, it probably broke in what, month 16, would you say, Matt?
Yeah. It was
of those 18 months.
Yeah.
So we failed maybe 3 or 4 times those first 16 months. The record was a failure. And one more shot. We're going to try one more video. And the record company came back. We want to try one more video. And we were doing these shows like, I mean, Metallica had us open up for them, you know, and it's an amazing spot to be. But, you know, our music is not for their fans. It was very different for them. So we would sell like one T-shirt, you know. Like, nobody cared. Nobody, they didn't, you know. James Hetfield actually came up, played War Pigs with us, and then like people came around, and that was amazing that he did that. And actually, people liked this after. It's almost like they just needed a context and what kind of box they could put us in for it to make sense. But we had years of that. We had not years of that, at least 15 months of that probably before the thing broke.
And then you think a song like Epic, it just hits and then everything switches. And you know, I've seen what happens with bands. You know, when you get the radio support and you get the MTV support, everything changes in different markets. You know, like when you go back to that market with radio support, it's like, holy shit, you get all the other people, you get all the other attention that you know, maybe obviously touring, you're going to build up a fan base, you're going to have diehards, but then all of a sudden, all this other attention comes. So it's got to be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's very different because, well, also before we say that Epic was the big hit, I mean, we toured Europe probably 4 or 5 times, maybe 6, right? Sure. On that, kept going back because every time we came back, we were selling it out and it was getting bigger. And from my view, it's like something's really working here because our shows were also very physical back then. So they were big, sweaty, very, very chaotic shows. And I was like, you know, we played the Astoria in London, and like the guardrail got broken over and people were just like dogpiling on each other. It was like madness. And that was amazing, right? And that's when MTV picked up our video right around that time. And everything got actually less wild in a really weird way. Once it got in the mainstream media, everything changed in also a less rock and roll way, if that makes any sense.
I don't even remember, Bill, but do you remember MTV said that if they could participate in the editing of that video, they were going to play it? I remember you guys let them get their hands on it. They edited it and they put it out for 2 120-minute shows, like which is Sunday night at 10 o'clock at night. And then they sat on it for 6 months. And I've said so many times to people, I said, Faith No More broke it. It wasn't MTV. It's like you guys went back and forth to England, did across the United States. I think they finally had to play that video that was sitting on their shelf because you guys created such a groundswell because they did nothing to really support it initially.
Yeah. I would say still, you know, even though that really did pop us in, it made average people know who we were by name. I think that we had something really good going up to that, even if that wouldn't have broken as a single. I mean, who knows where we would have gone with that and what would have happened. It would have probably changed our trajectory a little bit, like in our approach to music probably, but it might have been more aggressive. Who knows? But yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's just funny, you know, when you see where bands are, you know, different points in their career. You guys played the Spectrum here in Montreal, and on the bill, I think it was Voivod headlining. Soundgarden were in the middle and you guys were opening. And it's just funny to see how, you know, depending where bands go, you know.
Well, we started break, and so the end of that tour, that was actually when it broke around that time, because that was about a 2-month tour, and by the end of that tour, Epic was on getting on the airwaves, and people were all coming to see the opening band, which was us.
Right.
We had the buzz then, and it was like an early show. You know, it was really funny. Everybody could see something was changing.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize. I remember, well, first of all, when that record was turned in, Warner Brothers used to say to us, man, love the record, but it's not going to get played on radio because that kind of music doesn't get played on radio, which was true. And basically Faith No More broke open the gates for that style of music, which of course you eventually distance yourself from. But also when people don't realize that song has a 45-second instrumental kind of just jam freak out where everyone the drums are going off, the bass is going off, and the guitar's going off. For 45 seconds, for a song that made it number 8 or 9 on the chart was like that expected a lot from the listener to listen through that. You know, they had to like the song an awful lot to listen to that. You know,
one thing about Faith No More is you guys have always challenged the listeners.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons why there's such a fan base, is that I think people want to be challenged by their music. Sometimes they don't want to obviously be spoon fed all the time. Okay, here's your 3 minutes and 30 seconds of absolute perfection. And it's nice to be challenged as a listener. And I think, like I go back to, and I know you guys like Killing Joke, but like I've always liked Killing Joke because they challenged me always. And then they would always take different turns, and then they would put out a song like Love Like Blood and then distance everybody and be like, what are you doing?
Totally.
But, so, and that kind of got into my DNA as an artist, because I remember our band did not care about success. Like, we just wanted to do, right from naming our band Slaves on Dope, people are like, you're so stupid. No one's going to care about your band. And I was like, well, listen. And, changing from one album to the next, like just being like, all right, I don't want to scream anymore. Now we want to sing. And people are like, you guys, it's just, you guys kind of are like I hate to say this, but you're the blueprint of doing what the fuck you want to do, to a lot of modern bands.
It's interesting. We came from actually like SF underground scene, really, right? And that was in the early 80s. And so, major labels were like, they were like the devil, and everybody was getting screwed by them. They were watering down everybody's music. And, we had a thing where we were touring a lot, and we were also noticing that we couldn't get our records in the stores. And we're like, the only way you could kind of break this like weird little thing we're in is, to get bigger distribution. And so, we kind of said like, we're going to go to this major label thing. We're going to try this thing out, but we're going to be militant about, guarding our music. Like, nobody can fucking tell us anything. Like, this had to be a core value of ours if we were going to survive this, because we weren't going to make the mistake that all these other bands we saw make, and so that was something that I think we burned into our consciousness very deeply.
Yeah, you guys were initially like an art rock band.
Yeah, basically.
And the thing was, you guys, the thing I've always admired about Faith No More is that you guys would willingly go in any direction that you felt like going, and you didn't really care about the audience. And if one guy in the band said, we're going to do a polka song or whatever kind of song, you're like, let's do it. And I really love that about the band. And to me, this was one of the few bands I felt was, at least for a long time, very, very, very democratic. We have these, like, it's like a 5-pointed star. Each guy's pulling in different directions. Each guy's a different influence. And because of that tension of all the different guys pulling different directions, it actually had a really solid center, and I've always admired the band just for that reason, where you guys just do what you want to do. And you did challenge your listeners.
Yeah.
And you really, people had to earn their way into Faith No More. And when they did, they were diehard fans. It was really one of the only band that ever had that kind of, admiration for. Also the only band I've ever like stayed in the same room with, and slept with the guy in the room.
But we challenged each other too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of it, what we got as the end result, which I'm happy with most of it, came through a lot of like people suggesting things that other people probably wouldn't do on their own. And it's a matter of trust, acclamation, arguing, not very efficient process, but I think it helps the result to be bigger than any one person though too.
I think you're right. And I also think the fact that Patton was one of those few singers who didn't have his ego attached to his voice, and he could actually sing a song like Be Aggressive, which is not who he is.
That's true.
Have Roddy go, here, sing these lyrics. If someone brought that to Metallica or System of a Down or Korn, those guys would not.
Here's the lyrics to your song.
yeah. But they'd be afraid because it'd be an affront to their masculinity. And Pat's like, oh yeah, absolutely, I will sing this. One, because he was unafraid to do it, but two, because you guys were so up for challenging people that we're gonna sing about guys giving each other blowjobs.
Yeah.
But that's really, really, really bold. I think that's really creative. And where else can you go when most stuff has already been sung and done? This band's like looking in the nooks and crannies, like, well, what if we do a song like this? It's like, let's do it. Really, what a thrill! Seriously.
Yeah, I think there's some guys that might have issues, take issue with singing You're the Master and I'll Take It on My Knees. Like I can, maybe not now, but I'm sure at that point, yeah. Obviously the world's changing. You guys, again, when we started off, you guys have a long friendship. Some of your first recording experiences, Bill, were with Matt. Some of that early stuff, a lot of people talk about Faith No More with Patton. And of course, but the stuff with Chuck, Introduce Yourself, that first major label album, that album's amazing. And it's funny when you go back, because as much as I love it's hard for me. It's like asking me to pick one of my favorite kids with your records, but Introduce Yourself is a really, really good record. And there's some great fucking songs on there.
Yeah.
And it just, I kind of feel it gets left out of the conversation sometimes.
Well, it's a completely different energy than anything afterwards too. It's very scrappy. It's very lean and scrappy. And and it's very lively. It's got a lot of life and air breath to it, I think.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of my favorites was We Care a Lot. For me, the We Care a Lot is my favorite record because it was really the culmination of this band really coming together. We finally had enough money to be in a real studio.
Yeah.
And we made that record in 2 3-day weekends, including mixing. So we lived and breathed that record. And it's super creative considering how little time we had, how little budget. But you listen back to some of that stuff and we're like, man, it's a bigger, broader record than I ever thought we could have done under those circumstances. And
under those circumstances, for sure.
Yeah, and that was really the beginning of your bass tone of like you had that real attack, and we had the bass cabinet in a room, and it was ambient, and it was like that's a cool bass sound. That was really the beginning of that Bill Gould bass sound, or at least for me anyway. And by the way, I was still learning how to be an engineer when Bill came on board. I think I'd only been doing it for 9 months before he showed up, and then we did Your Firstborn, which was his band, and then Sharp Young Men. So the thing I like about Faith No More for me that's closest to my heart is that we grew up together in music.
Right.
The fact that we had success together is the thing that really makes it, for me, the thing that's closest to my heart, because we learned together, we grew up together, we made mistakes, and we hit the top together. That is, for me, the thing that's really important to me, and it feels really good to have been a part of that.
Yeah.
When you guys did that show with Chuck right before he passed at the Troubadour, I believe it was at the Troubadour, right? Was that a cool experience? Was that kind of a nice, to put a nice bow on that chapter with him? What was that like? And I've always been curious about that because I remember when they announced that I was trying my best to come to LA for that and I just couldn't do it. But I was like, I know this is not going to be something that's going to happen again or often. What was that like?
It was a lot of things. It was kind of, I mean, we were doing the sound check on the first show. I think we in San Francisco, and I could hear Chuck's, voice over the monitors. It was really weird.
Yeah.
It had been 30 years since I'd heard that been on a stage and heard that coming through a monitor. I mean,
sure.
That brings back a lot of shit. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. He really was on himself. He went into this kind of like, I'm going to do this right. Like he went into these shows super focused, and I think he always was kind of a focused guy, but he didn't want anybody to know that before. I think he tried to hide that part of it, but he came into this really kind of like really caring about what he was doing. And in a weird way, it took the pressure off me to have to like worry about what he was doing because I knew he cared, and it was a really great way actually to tie everything up because we kind of played like the band that maybe we should have been, back in the day.
And it speaks volumes of Patton being able to step back and let that happen. Because a lot of people would be, maybe they'd be a little territorial with that. I think that's kind of cool that was able to happen.
Well, Patton had Mr. Bungle, so he couldn't really complain about territory. I mean, to be honest.
No, but I'm just saying it's nice as someone who's cemented himself as the front man to be able to step back and go, hey, I think it's cool. I just think it's a nice, it's a generous thing in a way.
It is. I have to say, Patton is obviously the technically much better singer by far, and he's the best vocalist I've ever really worked with, to be honest. But I have to say something about Chuck that I found very endearing is that he had his heart on his sleeve and he sang about real, genuine, fundamental, emotional things. And there was a real through line as a listener to me to listen to what Chuck was saying. I'm like, this guy really means it. He's lived it. He's got his heart on his sleeve. And I have to say there's something really endearing about what Chuck did. It's
true. It's a really different energy, but a very deep, deep energy, even if you can get past the technical issues,
it's funny when you listen to kids now, and Matt, you'll know this, both of you guys will know this because you work with people, and Matt, I know you work with a lot of vocalists. Some people will hear certain voices that have character and they equate that as to not being able to sing. Like, perfect example, I spoke to a young kid recently and they were going on about how Perry Farrell was a horrible singer. Like he's always off. And I'm like, well, no, that's him. He's just not auto-tuned. He's just not corrected. I find that's one of the things that kind of is lacking nowadays with a lot of vocalists is just having that character in the voice. And Chuck's a perfect example of a guy that had character. I mean, no matter where he was going, he had something in his voice that was real.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think I'm sure, Bill, you probably talked about this in the press before, but when we did the demos at my studio, I had an 8-track studio, and And I remember I ran into Bill and Borden, and we went to some party in Berkeley, and Bill's like, "Yeah, man, you got to meet our new singer, this guy named Chuck." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So I go there, and Chuck is just beyond wasted. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is really going to be a wreck." So we go in the studio, and that day had the band recorded, and Chuck just did basically screamo through everything, just scream, 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 scream. I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is just not happening." And I remember, I don't know if it was Bill or I, one of us or some of us talked to him and said, "Can you do something more like Frank Sinatra?" And to Chuck's credit,
you know what happened? We were testing the mic, and he was like talking. We test the mic, testing. He starts singing it. Frank Sinatra's like, "Oh, strangers in the night." And we're like, "Sing like that." And he's like, "Huh? Okay. Do exactly what you're doing, but croon it." And he's like, "Okay." And it was Greed, right? And we're like,
yes.
It sounds amazing.
Dude,
right.
I agreed.
Okay.
That track, I still put up that 8-track version of Greed.
Do you have the Screamo 8-track? Do you have that?
No, I don't have
the That would be an amazing thing to put out, actually, when Chuck screamed everything.
I don't have the Screamo, but the one that he sang is just like, it's so good. I just love that whole track. I love that version from the studio, that moment in time. Him singing is still, for me, a high point. I just love that. I love listening to that track.
I don't think I'll ever be able, now that you've said that about Frank Sinatra, I don't think I'll ever be able to listen to the pre-chorus of Anne song without I can do it without thinking of Frank Sinatra now.
But even like spirit and excellence further down the road, that's an extended melody, and a lot of modern stuff is a really tight melody that doesn't go very far.
Sure.
But Chuck did have a sense of melody, even though he wasn't the best person to sing them. He came up with really beautiful melodic moments that really were resonant, I think.
I mean, he was a great piano player, actually, and he wrote a bunch of scores and stuff. Yeah, when I knew him, I was in a band in LA. I was like, probably joined like 14, 15 years old. He was a keyboard player, and he was a great piano player. He never sang. He never really wanted to be a singer, and I knew him that way. And his whole persona and what he was at Faith No More was really different than the guy I knew before. And he was he really underplayed it, but he was very knowledgeable musically.
So the history of Faith No More and Matt Wallace went as far as Angel Dust.
Yeah.
And then, there's a split, and you do a record with someone else. How did that come about? Was it scheduling thing? Was it, we just need to try to get new energy?
Well, I first of all, I known and loved the guys for a long time, and I did not want to be an anchor. I didn't want them to feel like they had to work with me every single time. We worked together on every single recording they've ever done. And there's a couple things that happened. One was I wanted to let them know that they could do whatever they want. And my feelings wouldn't be hurt. And I also did. I remember saying after the whole Angel Dust thing, I said, "Listen, you guys need a new producer, a new guitar player, or both." Because I was tapped out, and but I wanted them to succeed, and I didn't want to be like, "Oh, we got to work with Wallace again."
That thing of the Angel Dust was when we said it's 2.5 months. I mean, and you do know each other that well. I mean, there's good things about it that we talked about, and the hard things about it are, you get to know somebody so well that it's hard to actually focus and get serious work done because you're just fucking around all the time. Because the other person's not going to do anything, and what is he going to? You know each other, right? You know how to push each other's buttons, and that's all fun and games, but it makes the work actually harder to focus and actually and Matt was kind of like, after it's like, I don't know if I can do this with you guys anymore.
Yeah.
And we were like, and it seemed like kind of like, well, what, we only have hurt ourselves. I mean, how you capture a band that is a lens, like a glass lens. And, we've always heard ourselves recorded through Matt's lens, and it was kind of like, what could we sound like through somebody else's lens? I mean, it was kind of a cool thing. Like, why not? Right. Maybe we might see a different aspect to ourselves that we don't know about.
Yeah,
of course.
Absolutely.
It's very Faith No More to make that move. Definitely.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
And I get it. Like when I originally spoke to you about coming on the show, Bill, I said, would you be cool if Matt joined in? You were like, oh man, like if he comes in, I've known this guy since I'm a teenager. We're just going to fuck around the whole time. So I can see what you mean by that.
Yeah, we've gotten into some trouble together. So
I'm not even going to ask you to share anything because I don't want.
There he goes. Yeah.
Well, listen, you said it. Do you want to share any trouble you might have gotten into?
You recognize this flag over there, Matt?
No, what's that from?
That is, I'll give you a little clue. It's a Vietnamese flag.
Okay. For what?
That we picked up in Samoa.
Oh, okay. I did. I don't
Because you
remember
got a
that.
flag too, didn't you? You got a flag.
Yeah, I did, but I don't remember that. Yeah, I got the Vietnamese one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
Samoan.
Yeah.
So Bill
Anyway, yeah, we
basically, go ahead, Bill. No,
no. Matt, started.
well, anyway, so Bill knew this priest in the state in L.A.
It
and Bill
starts off
wanted
good already.
Yeah, I just was gonna say,
Off
Bill
to a
knew a
great
priest
start.
in L.A.
and apparently he was not molested by this priest. So Bill said, "Hey, Matt, we're going to go to Samoa and record this Samoan chorale group." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great." We weren't sure if there's any electricity there, so I put together all this recording equipment, and we had like literally 20 pounds of batteries, and we went there to record the Samoan group. And oh wait, so before then, Bill's like, "Oh, Matt, you got to try this stuff called Sananamax. It's like this natural thing from a health food store." And I remember trying it in your Sunset area, a place. And I was like, "Nah, this stuff doesn't feel very good." So anyway, we go to Samoa and we start fooling around. I'll let Bill take over for a while, then I'll jump back on board.
No, we went to record this choirs because Samoan culture has amazing singing choirs. That's it's and they all sing. They grew up singing. It's like this amazing thing. And I had heard it before, and I was like, that's something that I couldn't find records of it. I actually wanted to buy records of it. They didn't exist. Even when we went to New Zealand, I couldn't find records of it. So it's found a hookup there, and Matt and I went down there to record it. And it was really interesting because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, the choir that we were there to record hadn't rehearsed at all. And they'd never been recorded before. So they're coughing and hacking through the whole recording. We came all the way down there, and it was like we couldn't get a good take on anything. And then we decided, like, we rented this car and we decided just to drive around and just check the thing out on an off day, check the island out. And we came to this place where there was like a kids choir singing, and we just drove up there and walked in, and these kids were friggin' amazing. This is exactly what we come all the way to capture. And we didn't have our recording stuff with us.
No, well, no, but what had happened though was we had packed all of our gear because it was actually the day before we were going to leave. So we packed all our gear up, and we're like, okay, we're done. The stuff's ready to go. And then you and I got it. It was this giant, I mean, this is humongous grass hut the size of a basketball court. I remember Bill and I were there, and all these young men are sitting on the ground, and they're singing, and they're chanting, and they're pounding their chest. And
it was fabulous.
It was so powerful. They were so in unison and melodic, but just viscerally powerful. And we're looking at each other like, this is what we should have recorded. Oh my God, because the Samoan crowd was just, they were so sketchy. It was really bad.
We went all the way down there, recorded this stuff, and none of it was really usable enough to release. Like I keep, every time some new plugin comes out that takes noise out of something, I run these tapes through it.
Really?
Any way we can salvage it, but not yet.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. But so anyway, one of the hijinks was there's a couple hijinks. One is we met these Australian gals that we ended up kind of palling around with, and it was like the day before they were going to leave, we went down to this restaurant called the Waterfront, and they were both vegetarian. And so Bill and I are looking at the menu, and they're like, "Oh yeah, but we'll eat fish." We go, "Oh great." We go, "Look, these things called prairie oysters." I'm like, "Oh, oysters, we'll eat those." And Bill and I order them, and of course we're eating them, and then of course Bill and I start laughing, and they're like, "What's going on?" And we go, "Well, they're not actually oysters. They're actually bull testicles." They get up from the table. They push their chairs and they go, "Fuck you guys. We're going to leave." And we finally get them to calm down. They sit back down, and we're sitting there. Then the cook comes by, the chef, and he goes, "How's your dinner?" And we go, "Yeah, we did this prairie oyster thing." And the ladies got upset. He goes, "Oh, they're not bull testicles. They're pig testicles. There's no bulls on the island."
But let's just say we rented a car. I think it was 3 cars on the whole island. And by the end of the week, everybody on the island knew who we were.
Because we were driving like idiots. And then one day, Bill and I are walking down this road, and this truckload of these Samoan guys go by, and someone throws a rock and hits me right in the head because we had harassed so many villages with the car.
Yeah.
And then one of the
youthful shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly. It was good. It was fun.
You came back together to work on Sol Invictus. Do you remember, Matt, when you first got the call from Bill that Faith No More was back on, and how much in advance of all these announcements did you know that the band was kind of going to be coming back?
Well, I knew a little bit because like about 4 months prior, Bill had come down with a hard drive with the music to play to me. He just wanted to make sure that, he thought he wanted to get my take on if things were sounding good or whatever. So he, for whatever reason, had to transfer everything to my hard drive. And we listened to all this stuff, and I said, "Oh, the stuff sounds good. Everything, you've done a great job recording. Great." So Bill finishes up, and he starts driving home. And I, of course, have this recordings of Faith No More. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to mix it. I'm going to show the guys that they should hire me to mix it." And Bill calls up. He goes, "Hey, Matt, you know that stuff on your hard drive?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I need you to erase it." I'm like, "Oh man." And it was one of the most difficult things in my entire career is I erased what I really wanted to hang on to. And I just wiped it. I was like, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to, because I really wanted to mix it. So I wiped it. And then like 6 months later, it was like, hey, I got this stuff. Do you want to mix a song? So he gave me the stuff and I mixed a song, and I guess it did a good job, and they hired me for the rest of them. So
all the stuff you had, was this stuff, Bill, that you guys just turfed, or was it stuff that
Well,
you?
I mean, we recorded the album in our rehearsal room, right?
Right.
So we didn't tell anybody we were doing it. So,
No.
I mean, we didn't tell anybody. Like, really, I didn't tell my wife for a couple months when I was working into it. And
Really?
because we just didn't want people speculating. I just didn't want to hear noise. And also we didn't have any engineers. We were doing it. I was just using my recording gear that I had collected over the years, and I was just doing it myself. And, you know, when I went down to Matt's was like, I mean, you know, you start working in a vacuum where it's just me and the guys, and I'm probably the most technical. So I don't have anybody to bounce anything off of. And I was like, what am I doing? I've spent 2 to 3 months in this thing. And like, am I going up down a rabbit hole or what? And Matt was like, Matt, tell me that this is usable stuff.
And I thought it sounded great.
I don't even know what I'm hearing anymore, you know? Yeah.
I just said I said, Bill, you're doing a great job. It sounds really good, man. Keep going. And it was really great. For me, it was a thrill to hear the band being produced by the band and doing their own thing.
Sure.
Any outside influence, I was like, that was really exciting to hear that stuff. It was really cool.
And did the stuff that you originally got, Matt, did a lot of that stuff end up on Sol Invictus, or were there
all
some
of it? Yeah,
it is. Okay.
Yeah, Bill came down with Superhero, and I mixed it, and I spent a couple days mixing. And I actually mixed it to sound like Queens of the Stone Age. It was like really thick and just like You know, and it was really, I was so excited to play it, and Bill's like, no. I'm like, what? So Bill sits down on the couch, and like in 45 minutes, I have to revamp the entire mix and get it back to where because Bill had more of that kind of scrappier Faith No More sound, like where you can hear the room ambience on the drums and the bass, and it's a little more trashy for lack of a better term. And so I had to kind of reshift my thinking and kind of get back to what Bill wanted.
It's funny you bring up Superhero, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you while you were here, Bill. You guys went and recorded that in at the BBC, that live recording that you guys did. Yeah, it was with Daniel, right? I think it was Daniel from BBC. He was one of the hosts out there. I think his name's Daniel.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that is pretty live off the floor, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
I mean, when I listen to that, and I'll often send that to bands, I'll be like, until you sound like this live, you got a lot of fucking work to do. I mean, that to me shows what kind of a band you guys are. I mean, you guys are it was impressive.
There's something about that recording that makes it great. And it's because we'd been playing those songs live for about a month and a half before we did that. There's something really different about playing a song live than recording it. And this was kind of more what we were like back in the early days, like before Introduce Yourself, before the real thing. Like we would know the songs that well. Yeah. And Matt would capture that. And with Sol Invictus, we're living in this digital age where you can ride and sit and throw some parts down, and it's not the same thing. And so when that album, I'm happy with Sol Invictus. I think it's okay. But I think that after we toured it for a month, that's the band that should have played on that recording. And you can hear it. And it was very simple. There's not a lot of tracks. It's just live, but it's us in control with confidence. That's the difference.
I think that Superhero version is mind-blowingly powerful. I've watched it so many times. I put up and I go, oh my God, this is a band at the height of their powers. And I think for me, like you say, Bill, you guys had played it, so you guys knew it inside and out. But honestly, the other part that made it so good, it was a singular vocal, which left a lot of space for the music.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Because we really wrestled with Sol Invictus, where Bill and I would mix it. We go, oh my God, it sounds really, really good. Then Pat would go, okay, here's 24 tracks of vocals, and each one has its own reverb, delay, compression, and doubling. And so then we the music's here, then we put the vocals on, the music kind of got quieter and quieter. And I think that it did, the sound of the record did suffer a little bit because of so much vocal stuff. And Patton had a very specific idea of how he wanted to sit on the track. And I think that there wasn't a lot of kind of back and forth. It was just like, this is how it goes, from my perspective anyway.
When you think of, where this band has been, where this band, will go, whether it be, continuing to make music, whether it just be, continuing to exist in the space as Faith No More, what they've done so far. Is there anything you look at and go, man, I wish we would have done that differently? Or are you happy with the way everything's come and the way everything's gone in the direction?
I'm not happy.
Are you ever happy though with that?
No, not really. No, actually.
Right.
I mean, I think that's, I mean, the part of the unhappiness is part of the drive to do better, I guess. Right.
Right. Of course.
I mean, every album, there were things that bothered me from the album before that I never wanted to repeat. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that a lot of our changes we went through had that, a lot of that in it. So I'm always with this band, with this music, I'm always going to be very, very critical. I think it's very, very hard to let that go.
Even through a 30-year lens, when you look back on Angelus, is there stuff that bugged you so much before that you kind of let go and go, all right, that it wasn't as bad as I thought?
Oh, absolutely. That.
Okay,
definitely.
good.
It takes about 20 or 30 years
for you to like the record.
You do get there.
Yeah.
There's hope for people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've criticisms of the records too, from my end, of things I could have done better and differently. So there's always that thing. And the thing about Bill is, I don't know if people realize this, but from where I see it, Bill has always been the engine in the band.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I went and visited Bill up in San Francisco, like way before Sol Invictus, he played me a bunch of stuff he recorded, and I'm like, man, these sounds like great Faith No More tracks. He goes, yeah, it's just me. I go, how many of these tracks do you have? He go, I don't know, like 70 or 80. I'm like, you have 70, 80.
So where is all that stuff?
Yeah, so he's always
I've got just tons of shit.
He's got tons of, and the one thing that I've always bugged Bill about, and I think one day will come to light, is his cassette 4-track version of the song Epic is incredible. All of the stuff is there. The guitars, the keyboards, the drums, everything is there, including the actual keyboard part. And I would love to take credit for I heard this little demo and I made it better. It's like, no, Bill walked in with a thing that was fully realized. I just helped him capture it as good as we could. And so Bill has always been the driving force where let's do this or let's do that. He's always been the one who kind of brings the raw material to the table, from my perspective anyway.
Right. Matt, you're you've gone on and you've produced some really, really rad bands, but very different from Faith No More.
Oh yeah.
Like Maroon 5, Train. Did any of those bands come to you because of your work with Faith No More? Like what would be the band that you'd say that people would be the most surprised that you got a gig because of what you've done with Faith No More?
Right. Well, first of all, I can't imagine Maroon 5 came to me for Faith No More. I just can't imagine. Or even
but sometimes you'd be surprised at those connections.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know, man. I know that there are bands like, I say, Korn and System of a Down and a bunch of others came to me after that. And it's really weird. I've never said this in an interview, but I actually turned down bands because I didn't want to kind of dilute the thing I did with Faith No More. I didn't want to do another band that was like a sort of Faith No More or influenced by Faith No More. I just wanted to work with Faith No More,
right,
or kind of nobody. And I know that probably wasn't the smartest career decision to make, because I could have worked with a bunch of other people, but I was like, man, I just there's this thing that we did, because the band would come in with their weird artsy craftsy stuff, and I would try to superimpose a little bit of like organizing it and maybe a little bit of making it a little more pop in a gentle way. And to me, it was that even the wrestling between the band and myself was really important to create really exceptional music, for me anyway.
So was it a different experience for you when you went in with somebody that didn't have any of that kind of tension, where it was just like, hey Matt, we're coming to see you because you're good at doing this? And
yeah, pretty much. Most other bands feel more
it wasn't a big fight.
They're a little more polite.
yeah. But I think other bands were more, they're more homogenized, more monochromatic. It was almost like all the guys were kind of doing the same kind of music together. Like every other band, all the members were actually moving in a very similar direction.
Right.
And whatever kind of music was like, well, it's just that kind of music. Faith No More, it was a total crapshoot, because, one guy's into African drumming, one guy's into disco, one guy's into something else, and you're just like, one guy's into pop, one guy's into Killing Joke, and it was like trying to, corral marbles rolling down a hill, like, shoot, I don't know, but it really, there was a dynamic tension that was really, really, really important, and I've never encountered since that kind of moving in separate, opposite, different directions. I've never, ever encountered that,
I imagine you, Bill, sitting with Matt for so many years and watching, what he does, which is he's really good at. I mean, the proof is even after you guys, he went on to produce some massive stuff. Did you pick up a lot in terms of how you work around in the studio?
I was a sponge. I was, Matt will attest to this. Like, I was a pain in his ass. I watched everything that he did. I mean, I was there all the time watching everything he did all the time.
Yeah.
It was, to me, it was all fascinating. He was making magic as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you were always interested in that stuff, which is why you end up carrying the torch and recording Sol Invictus. You were always very, very interested in the other side of the glass, which was really good. Mm-hmm. But even the last the Faith No More album before Sol Invictus, the album of the year.
Yeah,
that was you. I mean, you really wasn't it you and who was the other guy? Fleming, or who was the guy that produced that with you? What's his name?
Produced what? Sorry.
Album of the year.
My wife just texted me. What?
She's like, "Are you still on there? Get off. We have groceries."
Album of the year. I mean, I remember visiting you when you made Album of the Year. It was in the basement of your house, and you had all this gear there. And so again, that
Rolly.
was Rolly, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was helping you, but you were kind of becoming de facto producer and really pulling that thing.
Well,
through.
Everybody was kind of like, for that record, it was like herding cats, getting everybody to come in, because they all kind of had these other project that they were kind of focusing on, and bringing everybody back was a real battle. And so I was de facto producer, because I was kind of, while we were making the record, I was the constant. And Rolly, it was kind of like similar to what Matt helped us with Sol Invictus, where it was like, okay, I mean, I don't know if I would trust myself to mix this. So we had Matt mixing our other records, and we've had like Andy Wallace mixing a record. Like, I don't know, there's no fucking way I'm gonna mix. It's not gonna, no way is it gonna hold up to this. So Rolly did some stuff with the Young Gods, which is a very interesting, great band, and I'd met him before, and I really liked him. So we were hoping he'd just be kind of our mixer. And this was the early days of Pro Tools, and he worked more in that digital realm. Like Young Gods, definitely you can hear that. And he's like, there's some things really that we could probably tighten up and fix. And I hadn't even thought of. And he ended up getting actually pretty involved in getting the arrangements tightened up. And that was amazing. I learned a lot there.
And that was really the early beginnings of digital recordings, when people were actually starting to, record in different places and send files to each other.
I mean, people before that had been doing it for about 3 or 4 years, but what they were doing was flying in vocals and fixing vocals, for example, fixing a bad drum, the 1 track or 2 tracks. And with Rolly, we basically had 32 tracks transferred from, we got a reel-to-reel machine and brought it into my house, into my basement, and transferred it into Pro Tools. And we did some work in there and put it back to tape again. So that was kind of a big deal at the time. That was kind of a crazy thing to do.
I appreciate both of you taking the time. I have one last thing to speak to you about, and I want to wait till the end to ask you. No, don't worry. So as you know, Bill, a couple of my buddies and I, one of the guys from Mastodon, another Bill, and my partner in Slaves, Kevin, we wanted to do this project when everyone was out of work, the roadie Relief.
Yeah.
So we did the Kings of Quarantine project, and we covered We Care a Lot. Reached out to you through Moss and got you to do a little thing on the end. What was that like for you to look back? Because I know I know you had mentioned, you'd text me and said, it was really well done, this and that. And I got Roddy's reaction of seeing, DMC singing his lyrics and how that meant a lot to him. But what was it like for you to see all of these bands? Because I'll tell you, man, we put 4 of those songs together. That was the easiest one, because the minute I said the song, across the board, everybody wanted to be involved. Everybody likes that song. Everybody loves Faith No More. What was it like for you to sit back and see all of these artists come together from different genres and all want to be there because they wanted to be there?
I could feel it more than anything else. Like, the energy was there. It's something like, I mean, I've had people do covers. I've heard Faith No More, and a lot of times I've been really polite and just kind of smiled and said, "Oh, sounds really good." And it's kind of like looking at a caricature of yourself that's not very flattering, at least for me, most of the time. And this was not that. It was like, I actually forwarded it to the guys and said, check this out. Like, these guys kind of did it. Like, there was an energy that attracted me to it. I could feel that energy. And that was what I get missing from a lot of people that do this, that had that vibe that I thought was really great.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, when you heard it?
I was blown away. Yeah, I'm with Bill. I mean, you could feel that people were into it.
Yeah.
It was a labor of love. And the fact that DMC got on board too was like, I mean, come on, that's really fantastic. It was really cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty much one of in the top 3 best covers I've ever heard, to be honest.
Wow.
Because it did have the right energy. It really did. I mean, the energy was really there. Like, it was undeniable and could stand up to the original pretty pretty well, I think.
But the other ones that you've done also have that energy. Like when I worked on the Channel Zero with you, like
Yeah.
that was another one. The energy was there, and that's a tough song, to get a band to play that.
Yeah.
Like, if you looked at it, on paper, you're like, that doesn't sound like such a good idea.
I know.
It could fuck up bad.
Believe me, I know. I mean, first of all, for me, as you guys know, Faith No More is Holy Grail, but the next one in line is Public Enemy. I mean, you don't fuck with Chuck.
I know.
Do not fuck with Chuck stuff.
I think you did it. I think it was good. There's an energy you guys are doing. There's a way you're doing it that's right. I think it works.
Yeah, well, I'm just hoping we get a couple more global pandemics and we'll just continue those, because right now everybody's back to work. But guys, this has meant a lot to me for you both to take the time to do this. As you both know, I'm a huge fan of the work that you guys have done together, and I think it's really cool that you guys are taking the time to talk to different people about these records, because it really is a celebration, because the work that you guys did change the face of music for generations. And I know it's probably strange to hear, but it really did. So
I think Faith No More changed the musical gene pool. Absolutely. I think you can
110%.
before and after Faith No More, and I absolutely believe that.
And Billy's probably sitting there going, I'm just waiting. My wife's bugging me. I got to go do groceries, whatever.
No. It's just really funny. I mean, I'm living in the same house that I was living in when we made Angel Dust, for example, right?
Right.
I walk outside my street, I go to the same store,
Sure.
And I remember how I felt then, because my life in some ways is not that much different from then. And it's just strange to think about. I remember what my headspace was then, and I remember what we wanted to do, and I remember we were trying to do, and then to be 30 years later and look back and still be here and go like, wow, we kind of did something that we intended. It made it across. I mean, it is a really cool, it's a cool thing. I don't know, everybody subjectively listens to what they want. I don't know what people like about it, to be honest with you. I couldn't say what I like about it might not be what somebody else is, but the fact that it translated somewhere, I think is that's the best kind of validation I think an artist could have. And I'm super, super grateful about that.
And moving forward, Bill, what do you have coming down the pipeline? I know you've got this alcohol thing. And it's weird because you talked to me about it before, and I'm 29 years sober in AA. So for me, it's like, cool. But can you tell me a bit about this alcohol and this thing that you're working with? Yeah.
I mean, it started back from Faith No More was touring back in the early 90s. We got into some Eastern European gigs pretty early on when bands weren't playing there. And kids were coming and bringing the stuff that families make out there. Like everybody's family makes a stuff called rakia, and that's from the fruit from the farm, and they know how to distill it. They've been doing it for like 800 years. It's very personal. There wasn't a lot of money back there, but people were giving us the rakia. And I just became I've been going there with bands and like just hanging out there. I like the area. I like the people. And I got addicted. I became attached to this drink. And I couldn't get it here. And I couldn't get it here for 20 years. And like about 3 years ago, I decided there's some people that really, this is an exceptional thing. It's very different from anything here. It's a lot like music in a way, right? I'm turning people on to some good music. And so I started importing it a couple of years ago, and I'm kind of doing that full time. And it's different than the music business, obviously, because it's a lot of laws. It's a lot of regulations. It's, it's kind of like, if the music part of the business of the retail business, right? Because you're selling products literally. But on the other hand, it's a lot like music. It's similar because I'm going out and I'm explaining it to people. It's a lot like touring, and it's just handmade stuff, and it's cultural, and it's like music. It's a way that people can get something people can connect through. Like. Our music was always very visual. I always wanted it to be visual, where when you hear it, it takes you someplace, right? Yeah. And this stuff to me is very visual. I think when you taste it, it takes you someplace. It takes you to the farm that it came from. So that's kind of why I gravitate to it. There's a similarity there. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years.
And Matt, what do you got coming?
Oh man, I'm just working. I'm doing a lot of mixing in Atmos, also known as
I listened to Epic and Spatial Audio, and that was a trip.
Is that cool? So we got
check it out. What happened yesterday?
What happened yesterday?
Number one on rock.
Epic's number one on rock.
Epic's number one on rock. Isn't that great? Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, that's really a thrill. So there's that. We've also did Midlife Crisis. and Easy. So those are all out on Spatial Audio. So it's really a thrill. Yeah, and I did this Gibson TV interview like 9 months ago, and they finally put it out.
Brilliant.
We're at like 55,000 views already, which is insane.
Yeah, it's
So
really
there's
good.
obviously interest
It's
in the
really
band.
good.
Yeah, there's still people still want to know about the band and how did it come to be, and so it's really a thrill just to be a part of that.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Jim from Faith No More followers for doing that documentary, that little doc. I don't know if you guys saw it on Angel Dust. It was really well done.
Where's this
Yeah.
at? I didn't see it.
I'll forward it to you. I'll forward you a link.
Yeah, it was. I was and it just showed me that the spirit of the band is very much alive through so many people. And seeing that on your page yesterday, Matt, that Epic was #1 at rock on Apple Music. I was just like, man,
Cool.
and yeah, and it's just like it's the TikTok generation. It's going to take, you see Kate Bush running up that hill
Yes.
because of Stranger Things. It's like, what? My daughter, I picked my daughter up from school and she's like, Dad, do you know this band Deftones? I'm like, fuck yeah. And she's like, well, they're on TikTok. I take her to the Deftones show. Her mind's blown. So it just, you never know what's going to happen.
It's
so
amazing.
It really is. We live in an interesting world, but guys, thank you so much for taking the time. This has meant a hell of a lot to me.
Awesome.
100%.
Yeah, really. Thanks so much.
100%.
All right, man. Good to see you guys.
Take care.
All right, see you guys. Take care.
All right, bye.
Man, you can really tell they're friends. Like a lot of people, I've seen so many interviews where there's press junkets and there's actors standing next to each other and they're like, we read lines together and got paid money.
Yeah.
But you could generally tell that they were friends even before the fame. And actually, they both found fame through the same project. And what really threw me for a loop is when he said that I didn't want to produce any other bands that reminded me of Faith No More because what we did was so special. And I'm like, what? I probably lost a lot of career opportunity over that. And I'm like, wow, who does that? Who has that kind of integrity?
I know.
That's insane. Can you tell the people what other bands he has produced as well?
Matt Wallace has worked with, he mentioned it in the interview, he's worked with Maroon 5, he's worked with Train, he's worked with a ton of bands, he's mixed a lot of stuff. So that's what's really crazy is that the guy's worked in the world of pop, and he's worked in mainstream rock, but Faith No More was kind of like that band, you know what I mean? That band that Matt Wallace will always be associated with Faith No More. Kind of like, if you're a fan of Korn, Ross Robinson will always be associated with Korn. He was the guy that did the first Korn record. And no matter how many things he did after him, he went on to do a Cure record, did all kinds of stuff. Ross Robinson's always going to be, Korn. And same thing with Matt. I mean, Matt has done a ton of stuff. If you just check out his discography, it's very, very impressive. But the fact that, he did all the work with Faith No More, comes back to Faith No More years later when they do another record, I just thought it was a beautiful thing. So the day after we had that chat, my daughter and I got in the car and we went to Toronto. And this was awesome because I was on such a high from doing this conversation with Matt and with Bill that I was like, hey, do you want to listen to Faith No More? And really listen to Faith No More. So we went in chronological order from one of their very early records, not the first album. We went from Introduce Yourself, then we went to The Real Thing, then we went to Angel Dust, then we went to King for a Day, and we listened to all the records back to back. And she was just in love. And on the way back, we listened to the last two, and she just loved it. And when we were in Toronto in a record store, I went into a record store and I checked out the 45 section, and I found this, which is crazy. It's a radio promo single, 45 of We Care a Lot. And it has Matt's name on there. This is from 1987. And I found this and it's an absolute perfect shape. That was nuts. So I sent a message to the guys and I said, look what I found after our conversation. They were like, what? So just cool. Life's weird how it works.
You're speaking about Billy. I've seen Billy on stage at Heavy MTL, of course. But Billy made a cameo in the Kings of Quarantine We Care a Lot video.
Yeah.
Like right at the end of it. And that was the scene stealer. That's the thing that got the most press.
I know.
It's just Billy's natural comedic timing.
Yeah, exactly. At the
just
end.
at the very, very, very end of it.
And didn't it make you feel good that you were so involved with that project? And then here you are, two people that, help create and make that song what it is, you know, one being one of the people that wrote it, one of the people that captured, you know, the essence of the song on tape. They both gave us so many flowers for that. I mean, they were just like, and you know, you had such a big part in that. So that must have felt good. I know for me, because we did it with such, you know, enthusiasm and with so much motivation for the right reasons, I think that it comes across. And, you know, you can't watch that video and hear that song without, like, the two go hand in hand. The original source material, the interpretation musically, and then visually. Like, the whole thing is just the body of work. It's just, it's what makes it so special. So I'm sure for you, you were pretty happy that they weren't going, yeah, it was kind of cool, and like rushing through the question.
Well, I was happy they were happy. Like every time anybody famous or not famous is on my computer and I'm editing it, my concern is, are they in sync and is it bright enough?
Yeah.
Like that's really what I'm always thinking about. But it is really nice to see that after all that work, especially that first one. The first one was magic. It's really nice to see that Billy especially responded to it so well, because really what that first cover was a bunch of artists coming together saying we love Faith No More. And that's the coolest part about it.
Yeah, no,
because
I know.
It's almost
I know.
a little mini tribute album in a way.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's,
In
in 3 minutes. It's kind of like a tribute album's worth of collaborations. And I just got to say one thing about Faith No More. I don't know all the names of their tunes, but I remember falling asleep while watching a movie. I can't remember what movie it was, but I heard this song in my dreams, and I thought I was writing it. I thought it up, and it's like, you want it all.
That's epic. That's epic.
Yeah, exactly. And I woke up thinking, I'm gonna be fucking rich. I just wrote this amazing song in my dreams. And then someone turned on the movie again, and I'm like, son of a bitch. So for about 10 minutes, I thought my life was going to change, because it's just a crazy song. And watching that song on Saturday Night Live is something else. Holy shit.
Yeah, seeing Mike Patton crawl into the wind turbines in the back. And
Mike Patton is one crazy, charismatic, great looking, like what a star. Like, wow, holy shit. And I'm late to the Faith No More train. Okay. I'm just going to say that, but holy shit. Yeah.
Well, get on. There's always room. And believe me, man, it's a ride that you won't regret. I'm going to keep on with this. The whole puns of like the train, like it's a ride you won't regret. It'll take you right to where you need to get to. It might, you know, the road might be a little bumpy along the way, but just sit back, strap yourself in, and enjoy the Faith No More ride. Okay, whatever. Like, awesome. You know what I'm getting to. Ryan, pleasure again, as always. We've got some great stuff on the way. And again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for always supporting us. Check them out, heartbeathotsauce.com. I am holding up the blueberry habanero, which I absolutely adore, and I'm almost done. Wink, wink, send me more. And if you want to order some, go check it out. That's where I'm going to order it from. Right here, I'm going to use my own code, Rockman20. It'll get you 20% off. And that's it. Ryan, I'm out. Thank you for Studio House. Thank you to you. Thank you to our producer, Julia Kajerski. And thank you to Billy and Matt for coming on the show. We will see you next week on the Rockman Power Hour.
And thank you to that woman who works at Wendy's yesterday who said I look like a guy from Hemlock Grove. Made me feel good.
Could be worse.
Wrote in my diary.